Bellator 257, Nemkov versus Davis 2, full card predictions and betting preview. What an epic card it's going to be from top to bottom. High level matchups. I really cannot wait to see it. Make sure you guys smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those post notifications too. And without further ado, let's start it off with the first fight of the night. A rematch in the welterweight division between high-level kickboxers. Peter Stanton recently, this was actually in February, won a one-night kickboxing tournament, winning all 3 fights by knockout. Now, the last fight both of them had in MMA was against one another. Raymond Daniels did win the first round of that fight. He was a bit more effective on the feet, was more active from the ground, but I mean, granted, neither of them grapplers. Specializing in striking is both their styles. 9-0 kickboxer Peter Stanton, 14-3 Raymond Daniels. The only man to beat him was Nicky Holtzkin. Has a high guard style and was coming forward. Peter Stanton was trying to replicate that. Wasn't doing it super successfully, but did have a few moments in that fight. Still, you got to ride Raymond Daniels here. I think he's going to get it done and win this bout. I feel like he does it possibly by a unanimous decision, but also could see a TKO. I feel like this is going to be a crazy fight either way. Realistically, if I see a stoppage, I feel like it's going to be Daniels hitting Stanton with something to the body. I feel like that spinning back kick that stopped the fight last time that hit below the belt. I mean, if that would have landed to the stomach, that would have done a lot of damage. I'm going to pick Daniels here. I do think he wins, but Peter Stanton is game as they come. Both explosive strikers, 50-50 fight. I think it's going to be an excellent matchup in the welterweight division, and definitely a fight. If you're a striking fan, you don't want to miss it. It's going to be high-level stuff from both of them. Raymond Daniels still currently the Bellator kickboxing champion as well. Excellent fight. Now, the next fight of the night, high-level MMA action in the light heavyweight division. I'm very excited to see Gregory Mallard. Was difficult to find footage on this guy. He's actually Jairzinho Rosenstruik's cousin, and he's fighting Julius Angelica, who is a monster. One of, I think, the hottest prospects that people probably don't know about in the light heavyweight division, period. Forget about weight classes. He's a former LFA light heavyweight champion. He has excellent striking skills. He's very relaxed and definitely does have a boxing heavy approach. But if you see this guy's 1-2s, excellent. He's piecing fighters up, and he's so patient and calm. And the reason being, elite level takedown defense. In the tie clinch, he's very dangerous, and his physical strength is something to note. I'll be honest, I don't see Julius Angelica's losing to many fighters outside of the top of Bellator. I think he's going to run through Gregory Mallard. And Angelica is known for going the distance more often than not. Granted, his last fight was against Alex Polizzi, who was a super hot prospect, and he beat him. Prior to that, beat another hot prospect. He's beating undefeated guys. Let's look at the past two. Polizzi was 7-0. Jordan Young was 11-0. Prior to that, he beat Carl Reed. I mean, look at this guy. He's beating very good competition. One matchup was on the Contender Series. That was in 2019. He's a hot prospect heavyweight. He's going to dominate Gregory Mallard, and I think he does get a TKO here in 2 rounds or less. I could see it in the first. It should be a pretty vast level difference. And if Mallard does come out and prove me wrong, I would be impressed. I mean, as I said, not much to see about him, but I just feel like with the skill set of Julius, it's only going to be top-level guys being able to give him competition here. I really think he is a hot prospect in the light heavyweight division. Now, the next fight of the night, Steve Mowry versus Sean Asher. Mowry's been around in the heavyweight division for a while now, 8-0 as a professional. Look at that height, 6'8" with a 79-inch reach. His opponent is 6 feet tall, was actually more of a light heavyweight in his prime, but is now fighting in the heavyweight division. Serious size discrepancy. With Mowry, you have a really solid kickboxer. Not the most elite level, but very solid skill set. Decent straight punches down the line. His leg kicks are very good, and his knee up the middle to the head, because he's so tall, extremely effective, especially here in this matchup versus the much shorter man. He's also a bit hittable down the center line because he is a bit stiff without much head movement. But still, with this matchup here, I mean, Asher does bring a lot of pro experience, but has had a bit of inactivity as of late. And also his striking is not bad. It is a good style. It's aggressive. He does unload shots, does have a habit of bringing the chin up a bit too high for my liking. Last fight was in 2019, but prior to that, his last fight was in 2016. That matchup was at light heavyweight, as I mentioned, and then the most recent fight, that was his heavyweight bout. He's not a natural heavyweight. I think Steve Mowry is going to run through him here, but absolutely Sean Asher will be game. And I do think we have a competitive fight in store, but the size differential too much. I would say knockout in the second round for Steve Mowry, possibly by that up the middle knee, which he does very well. I think he does get it done in emphatic fashion. Now let's check the odds out for this fight if we can find them here. Steve Mowry is a minus 610 favorite. Deshaun Asher at the plus 425 underdog. The odds make sense being that widespread. I'm not going to say throw a straight up bet on Mowry though. Those are just too widespread odds. Maybe a parlay piece, but you have to note he has been hurt in fights before. But granted, the size difference just so substantial. I have a hard time seeing Sean Asher having much of a chance in this fight. The next bout is Saul Rogers and Mads Burnell. This is high-level action here. Both high-level MMA veterans. Saul Rogers was actually on his way to being a finalist in The Ultimate Fighter. Unfortunately, some visa issues. I suppose he lied on his visa or something like that. It was a while ago now, so I don't remember exactly. But he was supposed to be fighting, I believe, against Artem Lobov, and I believe he would have been the Ultimate Fighter winner of that season. He did beat the winner on the show, and that was Ryan Hall, who's now a pretty hot prospect in the UFC, though a bit inactive. Mads Burnell, high-level stuff. He fought in the UFC as well, did lose to Arnold Allen in his last bout there. Style matchup. Let's first talk about Saul Rogers. He has pretty decent striking, and he does like to set up overhands and lead hooks, but the grappling is where he shines. He's very solid there. Good takedowns and effective on the top. He'll look for submissions, and he will open it up with grounded pound. But he's fighting Mads Burnell, who's a Thai-style striker who has very good hands, and he mixes it up well. Like I see a lot of speed with this striking too. Definitely his advantage in favor of Mads Burnell being, I feel like his wrestling is as good, if not better, than Saul Rogers. His submission game is elite level, and he has very good ground and pound work. I'll be honest, I think both very skilled on the ground. Got to give Burnell the edge on the striking, but I do feel like Mads Burnell wins this fight by a unanimous decision over Saul Rogers. High-level stuff here in the featherweight division, and I think for Burnell, this is going to really push him forward. I think he could be a contender here in Bellator. As far as the odds for this matchup, Rogers the plus 180 dog, Burnell at the minus 220. I like Mads Burnell. Definitely could do a straight-up bet there, but don't go crazy with the money. 100% parlay edition is Mads Burnell in this matchup with Saul Rogers, which I think will be a fun grappling fight. If you enjoy grappling, that's an awesome matchup. So far, some awesome fights on this Bellator card. Next bout, Pedro Carvalho and J.J. Wilson. This is high-level stuff in the featherweight division. Both are ranked there. The winner definitely moves into a fairly big fight, especially J.J. Wilson. He's undefeated as a pro. I'd call him a bit of a submission specialist. Has an excellent grappling game. Also does have some decent striking skills. His opponent, Pedro Carvalho, excellent striker. He's a southpaw. He's calm. He's precise. He has a bit of a McGregor-esque style, but he does train at that SBG gym, and his body kicks are fantastic. As far as striking, if this was a straight striking match all day, I'm picking Pedro Carvalho, even though sometimes he does get a bit over-aggressive and leave himself open. Obviously, we saw that in his last fight with Patricio Pitbull, but I feel like the grappling skill set of J.J. Wilson is going to give issues to Pedro here. I think he's going to attack with a lot of clinch work, tire out Pedro Carvalho. He could potentially, I could see a submission for Wilson, but I am going to pick him by a unanimous decision here to beat Pedro Carvalho. At 7-0, he's a really hot prospect. Carvalho, only 25, is also a hot prospect, but has had the big shots, has had his contender chances. I think J.J. Wilson is the new kid on the block on the rise. The odds for this fight right now, I believe Wilson is the dog. It depends on what website you go to. It's around a Pick'em's minus 110. You can also find J.J. Wilson as a slight underdog. I feel like he will get it done probably by a decision here. Good fight. Another great fight on the card. As I mentioned, I mean, this is a stacked Bellator card. They're doing a very good job. They have some high-level stuff here. Now, Julia Budd versus Diona Silva. This fight was actually supposed to take place, I believe, last week. They have it rebooked. It's now on this card. Silva is a pretty good striker, I would say, but a bit of an awkward style and a slightly square stance. Can get caught. Mixes it up well, though, with punches and kicks. Does throw a ton of leg kicks. But I feel like in this matchup, she's completely outclassed. Julia Budd has a pressure forward style, a Thai type striking background, or rather style for her. Solid kickboxing, especially her teep kicks. I just feel like Julia Budd is higher level everywhere. She's also stronger and more athletic. The size here, Julia Budd just slightly taller with a half-inch reach advantage. but I just think the skill set is vast. The difference between these two is going to be very evident. Julia Budd should win a dominant unanimous decision here and be back in contendership. This is a serious mismatch, in my opinion. Minus 675 favorite is Julia Budd to the plus 445 dog all day long. I like Julia Budd to win this fight. I believe she does get it done, and I think it should be fairly impressive. I'd like to see a finish, but less confident with that. Definitely believing, though, she does get it done by a dominant unanimous decision. Now, the next fight, Viktor Nemkov versus Karl Brexin, the brother of current champion Vadim Nemkov in the light heavyweight division. This is a really fun fight. A bit of an opposing styles matchup. Nemkov, he's decent with the striking, but I'd call him a submission specialist. Does have some pretty good takedowns and has experience in the PFL, his last fight being a draw there. For his opponent, Karl Brexin, he has a win over the current champion and brother of Viktor Nemkov, Vadim. And he's also a really dangerous kickboxer, knockout power in his punches and dangerous head kicks. He also brings in some pretty good wrestling defense. I feel like this is a very competitive fight. It's definitely a tricky one to pick. Not the most confident bet I could throw down on this matchup. Let's quickly look at the odds. Brexin at plus 165, Nemkov at minus 190. I'll be honest, I like the underdog in Brexin here to pull off a hard-fought win, but I definitely could see Viktor Nemkov getting a victory, especially by submission. But I am going to pick up Brexin, but it's not the most confident pick. But if you are looking for a dog that you want to throw something down on, I feel like Karl Brexin is the one to pick. And I do think he can beat Viktor Nemkov here. He's the better striker of the two. Granted, there's going to be some X factors for Nemkov. The grappling ability, definitely. But I feel like the takedown defense will hold up at least till the third round for Karl Brexin. But the reach advantage does favor Viktor Nemkov by a bit there, 2.5 inches. Still going to ride a Brexin, but as I said, not the most confident underdog pick, but he definitely can do it, and he could be a good pickup here. Next fight of the night. Overall, great card so far. Grachik Bazian versus Demarcus Jackson. Jackson, 5'8". Bazian, 6 feet tall. Let's quickly look at the betting odds for this matchup before we even talk about it. Jackson at the minus 150. Grachik Bazian at the plus 130. The style matchup between these two, from what I gathered, Grachik is a pretty good striker who's patient and does control range well, especially being the taller man at 6 feet. That's definitely his advantage. And he is difficult to take down. Granted, Austin Vandervoort recently beat him. That was in his last outing. Now, for Demarcus Jackson, he does have pretty solid kickboxing and brings a lot of power in his rear hooks. He has good takedown defense also and does have a fairly good submission game. I feel like Grachik being the bigger man, especially with the status of him being the underdog at the plus 130 in this matchup, I really like him for the pick. Both excel and are well-rounded, especially in the striking department, but I feel like Grachik winning this fight by a decision is a very realistic outcome here. I have him beating Demarcus Jackson. He's also 5 years younger. His 2 losses, I believe, are forgivable. I mean, as are Johnson, all losses are forgivable as long as you improve from them, but I think Grachik Bazian wins this fight against Demarcus Jackson, and I think he is another good underdog pickup on this card. There's definitely some dogs that might be worth a bet on this card. I'm picking Grachik Bazian to pull off a decision win over Demarcus Jackson. Good fight card, man. Excellent fight card. There was actually recently a canceled bout, John DeJesus versus Alfred Kajaki, and I was actually really looking forward to that matchup. That was supposed to be the next fight of the card. Fortunately, not happening. Lance Gibson Jr. versus Marcus Serene. If you don't know, Lance Gibson Sr. was actually a pro fighter back in the day, long time ago. He fought Evan Tanner, I believe, in the UFC at one point. Marcus Serene is a pretty good wrestler. Brings in that tough and tricky wrestling style. I mean, he gave Devin Powell a very difficult fight in his last bout. If you don't know, Devin Powell is a former UFC fighter, so has to, give him some respect, even though he was put to sleep by a submission at the end of that second round. He does have some decent striking, lots of head movement, but the wrestling and the top control is going to be where he shines now. For Lance Gibson Jr., trains alongside Julia Budd, who's also fighting on the card. She's a, very high-level fighter here in the Bellator featherweight division. He's a southpaw who likes to switch his stances up well. He's very calm and can kind of do it all well. I mean, he's a lifelong martial artist. He claims he's been training since he was 2 years of age. I wouldn't be that surprised, with his father being very into martial arts, and I believe his stepmother as well. I'm going to pick Marcus Serene to win this fight. I don't think I'm going to pick Lance Gibson Jr. to win this fight over Marcus Serene, but I don't think Marcus is going to be an easy fight. He's got that good wrestling background. I think he could land some takedowns potentially. I feel like submission or decision for Lance Gibson. I can't give you exactly what's going to happen because I do think we got to see how Lance Gibson Jr. responds to the wrestler Marcus Serene. Let's see the odds of this matchup. Minus 410 is Gibson Jr. Marcus Serene at the plus 330. I'm going to say skip the bet on Lance Gibson Jr. I just feel like too many unknowns with him, and I know Marcus Serene is game. Tricky fight. I think Lance Gibson definitely should win it, but who knows? I feel like the wrestling background could surprise us all, and Marcus Serene will pull off a big upset there, but I think Lance Gibson is a pick, but not necessarily a betting pick. If I'm going to throw money down, I'm not going to do it on him. Next fight of the night, Vida Ortega versus Desiree Yanez. Yanez coming off a very controversial loss. That was over at Combate. I believe she should have won the world title in that matchup, but unfortunately, they mostly reward striking over grappling. Now, Vida Ortega, her opponent, not an easy fight. Decent striker who's definitely willing to trade, coming off a loss against Alejandra Lara. Was controlled a bit there against the cage, which gives signs to how I feel like this fight's going to go. And also, Vida Ortega is not the most athletic girl. Desiree Yanez is very fast. She has a pressure forward style and is very good in the clinch and has solid takedowns from there as well. Athletic fighter. As I mentioned, the controversial loss. She could have been the Combate champion if not for that controversial loss. I think Desiree Yanez is going to control Vida Ortega against the cage and work towards a decision win. I'm going to pick unanimous decision for Desiree Yanez over Vida Ortega here. I believe the odds were pretty close for this matchup. Minus 110, minus 110. You can find Yanez as a slight favorite on some sites, but practically a pick'ems here. I feel like Desiree Yanez is an excellent pickup, especially at if you can get at the minus 110. I feel like she's going to run through Vida Ortega here in this matchup. Good debut for her. Not going to be, if you're looking for striking, not going to be the most entertaining fight, but it will be a lot of grappling work, a lot of clinch control, which is very difficult and will wear on Vida Ortega. Next fight of the night, Paul Daley and Sabah Homasi. This is a striker's dream fight. You're looking for entertainment, like as I mentioned, the first fight on the night, this is another one. They're both going to stand and trade. They're going to throw bombs. Paul Daley known for the detonator in that left hook. He puts people unconscious. If he touches you, he's going to put you out. I mean, he knocked out Lorenz Larkin, who's an excellent striker with that left hook. Sabah Homasi's a pretty good striker in his own right. He's on a 4-fight winning streak. Definitely has turned it around, since his UFC career where he wasn't super successful. He does throw a lot of leg kicks, knocking out Bobby Volker in his last fight with a flying knee, actually. And you also have to watch out for Sabah's head kicks. Granted, he's fighting Paul Daley, who's an excellent kickboxer, and as I mentioned, the power is so explosive. He also cuts off the cage very well. Not the best wrestler. That's definitely been a place he's struggled, but I don't think Sabah Homasi is going to go in there and try to wrestle. Daley maybe will mix in a few takedowns to make Daley think of the wrestling and then look for big punches, but I don't think Sabah Homasi will be awake too long to do that. I think Paul Daley knockout win in the first round. I could see it going into the second, depending on Sabah Homasi's approach to this fight. But if he comes out there as he normally does, which is an aggressive striking style, Paul Daley will knock him out in the first round. And I wouldn't be shocked if it's by that left hook. Paul Daley, lock pick here. And this may be his last fight. I know he's talked about retirement. He's a minus 185 favorite. Sabah Homasi, the plus 160 dog. I like the minus 185 Paul Daley all day. Not a bad straight up bet. Definitely not a bad parlay addition. He's going to win here. This next fight, tournament Grand Prix bout, quarterfinal bout. This is a huge fight. The winner of this fight will be fighting against Ryan Bader. Corey Anderson, longtime UFC veteran, had a lot of success in the UFC. Granted, when he got towards the top, tended to struggle. Does have some pretty decent kickboxing skills. Wrestling is where he shines. Excellent wrestling, and his top control is phenomenal. He does have a win over the #1 contender in the UFC, currently Glover Teixeira. Now, his opponent, very difficult name to say, Dovletdzhan Yagshimuradov. I believe this guy is somebody to keep a very close eye on. Dynamic knockout power. His striking is excellent. He sets up a lot of overhands with the jab. Tricky fighter, especially for Corey Anderson, because he also brings in a Sambo background. Very good takedown defense. Good submission work. I feel like this fight is going to be very tricky for Corey Anderson. Dovletdzhan, not easy. Not an easy fight by any means. And if Anderson underestimates him, he will be put out very fast. This guy is super fast on the feet, very creative. Corey Anderson, known for durability issues. I'll be honest with you, Dovletdzhan Yagshimuradov. I am going to predict first round knockout win for him. I think his overhand punch is going to land. If he can avoid the takedowns of Corey, if it's really going to be evident, if he can stop a couple takedowns, I think it's going Dovletdzhan Yagshimuradov's way, most definitely. Granted, if Corey is able to get on top and control, he is the taller guy at 6'3" versus the 5'11" man. I'll be honest though, I just feel like that overhand is going to land perfectly on the chin. It might look similar to the to the fight between Jan Blachowicz and Corey Anderson. Dovletdzhan Yagshimuradov, knockout round 1. I really see a possibility of this happening. He has the style to do it. He's on an excellent win streak. Corey Anderson, known for the questionable chin. I'm riding Dovletdzhan here. He's a plus 140 underdog. Anderson, the minus 175 favorite. If you don't like the dog pick, that's fine, but I personally would not throw money down on Corey with that questionable chin in this matchup. This guy will find the chin. He's known for it. You look at some of the wins on the resume as of recent. Unanimous decision, has a knockout there, submission, and then knockout. I mean, this guy, he's tricky. And Joachim Christensen was at one point regarded as a pretty high-level fighter, back in the 2010s. I'm going to ride Dovletdzhan Yagshimuradov to win here by emphatic fashion and move on to the next round with a big upset, definitely. Main event, Vadim Nemkov and Phil Davis. They run it back years, not too many years later, actually. I think it was like about 2 years ago was their first fight. Let's quickly check. Now I'm curious. Vadim Nemkov and him fought in 2018, and Nemkov won a split decision. I got to talk about that fight. Phil Davis had Nemkov in some trouble at the end of that fight. In that third round, Davis clearly won. He went for submission attempts, nearly had a Kimura twice. Vadim Nemkov, though, showed excellent skills in the first 2 rounds, was able to edge out Davis on the scorecards by a close decision. This is a very interesting matchup. I feel like Nemkov has most definitely evolved. He's looked excellent with his striking as of recent, knockout power, deadly head kicks from range. You look at that fight against Ryan Bader. The head kick landed beautifully. Beat the hell out of Ryan Bader. Also has a sambo background as well, so he has the takedown offense and defense, and it was evident in that first fight because Davis is an excellent wrestler who also is a pretty good striker. Mixes it up well with the punches and kicks, definitely with the hands though, is good, is fast, is tricky. He's also very athletic, and as I mentioned, the high-level wrestling, this is a very tricky fight. This one's scheduled for 5 rounds. I believe Vadim Nemkov has made the improvements to beat Phil Davis once again, and I think more clearly. But at the minus 200, is he a lock pick? Certainly not, because you have to respect Phil Davis. This guy's a very tricky out for anybody. I'm going to pick Nemkov, and I do think he can put away Phil Davis in the 4th round by a TKO. Could go a decision. Wouldn't be shocked. This man's never been finished. But if anybody can do it, I think Nemkov could stop Phil Davis later on in the fight. As long as he can avoid the wrestling attack of Phil, especially if Nemkov starts gassing, that's my fear. That's definitely a fear, but I don't think he will. I believe he's improved the stamina. He's fought much higher level competition at this point. Not that he has fought better guys than Phil Davis. I mean, Phil Davis is very close to Ryan Bader. Granted, different stylistic matchup. Nemkov had his way with Bader. Phil Davis dropped 2 fights to Bader. Does not matter. Styles make fights. This is a very tricky fight for Vadim Nemkov. Might be his trickiest test in this whole tournament. I'm going to pick Nemkov by a win here, but I acknowledge that Mr. Wonderful Phil Davis could somehow find his way beating Vadim Nemkov. They fought before. It was very competitive. I think this one will be competitive as well, but I think that Nemkov has made the proper adjustments, will be a bit better, and I think he's stopping Phil Davis in the 4th round by knockout. Will be the biggest win of his career. If he finishes Phil, that's huge. I'm so excited for this matchup. First title defense for Nemkov. Also, the winner of this fight will be in a scary fight versus the winner of Yoel Romero and Anthony Rumble Johnson. Overall, this Bellator 257 card is fantastic. I hope you guys enjoyed this full card prediction video and the betting preview. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Also, guys, follow my social media, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and I will see you all in the next video.